Yayo, we are here again with the Way Forward broadcast on a Saturday morning. It's a rainy Saturday morning from Nashville, Tennessee, but that's not going to stop us. However, if we do hear thunder and lightning and the power goes out, that will stop us. We'll consider that to be an act of God. And we know the Lord watches this show and that he enjoys this show. And so, Jason, how you doing over there, my man?
I'm doing all right. Doing all right. Trying to keep it all together. We're good.
Yep. Always love it when people call 2 minutes before the show because you know what they're not doing.
Yeah.
We know what they are not doing.
Yeah. Not engaging us online. They have direct
Everybody
access.
wants their time when they want their time.
That's right. Yep.
Well,
It's all
wanted to
good,
let you guys
beautiful morning here.
Oh, is it beautiful weather there?
We're supposed to get storms later on, but it's gorgeous right now. Blue skies.
Well, how about that?
Yeah.
See, the Empire Strikes Back. We had beautiful weather before when you guys were freezing, so this is good. This is good.
That's right.
Hey, I want to let you guys know the comment section is turned on. There were some folks from Twitch that last time that I did a broadcast. We don't have Twitch joining us today, but you Twitch people, they be planting viruses and stuff up in the show. So we got to watch this Twitch audience that's out there. But you guys, YouTube, Facebook Live, so glad to see you guys this morning. And thank you for, there's like 4 or 5 eyeballs tuning in on us this morning. We do a broadcast on Saturday mornings called The Way Forward. Jason and I talk about politics, religion, Jesus, and then more Jesus at the end of the show. And we're going to get into some pretty hot topics here. We usually start the show by talking about sports. So let's keep that energy. Hey, baby, who you picking for the ORU Arkansas game?
I'd like to see ORU win, but was it Arkansas hadn't been there since? Was it since we were in high school? It's been that long since Arkansas was in the tournament? It was a while ago, but I don't know. Oral Roberts is getting all this hate. I'm like, well,
why is ORU getting hate mail?
Because it's ORU. Because it's ORU.
You know what's funny is that in certain situations we might, I don't know that you could ever say that we'd give hate mail, but there's some ORU doctrines that are a little bit squirrely, according to what we would teach and what we would disciple people. And yet, when the New York Times and other groups try to jump, the LGBT tries to jump on their back. And really, as I was unpacking the story here, it's not ORU that's getting jumped on. It's the NCAA that's getting jumped on for allowing ORU to be in the tournament. These people, what are you doing?
Hey, but Loyola's legit. Loyola Chicago's not getting the kind of hate.
Because they got a nun. What'd you say? The reason why Illinois lost to him is because he got a praying nun. You can't come up against that.
Right. That's right. You can't compete with a very seasoned praying nun at that. So I don't know. I'd like to. I don't know. I'm kind of torn because I can remember when Arkansas was big, and it's almost like Nebraska in football. Like I remember Nebraska was just dominant, and now 20 years later, Nebraska who? What?
It happens. It happens to them all. Yeah. Duke's not in the tournament this year. Kentucky's not in the tournament this year.
I'm just giddy. I'm just still reeling off that.
Nah. East Tennessee State's not in the tournament this year. Yeah.
I'm just happy Duke's not there.
That's all a wash.
I'm pulling for everybody because Duke's not there. I'm just like, hey,
anybody but Duke.
Anybody but Duke. Yeah.
And North Carolina had a game, and now they're out.
They did. They came up against the Badgers, if I'm not mistaken, and the Badgers ate them up until we had to have Baylor, and then Baylor was Baylor. So I didn't expect Wisconsin to do well against Baylor. Baylor's starting to come around, and I could see them actually making it long as they keep that energy going, because they were tough. They were tough. They just were consistent, and our guys just couldn't hang there. What was sad is actually to see Iowa get knocked out so soon. Luca. I was kind of hoping
Luca Garza.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping he would finish. The Big Ten in general just didn't look well. I mean, the Big Ten in general, just 8 of the teams got knocked out by the second round or something. And
yeah, they're not that good. Michigan probably will win it all, but the rest of the teams, they're not that good.
Well, you say that now, but you weren't saying that 2 weeks ago.
That's a convenient argument.
Yeah.
Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, buddy.
You had Illinois going to the championship. So, I mean.
I did. That's a kiss of death. And I hesitate to say that I've got Baylor winning it all this year.
Yeah.
Because I got a lot of friends down there in Waco and the surrounding areas who are watching this prediction and thinking, Erskine, you haven't predicted anything right since the 85 Bears.
Since the 85 Bears, yeah. Yeah.
You've gotten it all wrong. Well, I want to read a little bit about this. I've got my final score for the Arkansas ORU game is ORU 85, Arkansas 84. All right, so they narrowly get the upset win, and they move on, and this story continues just like that. But really quickly, for those of you that don't know, ORU was established in the 1960s, 1963, by the televangelist, a spirit-empowered university filled with a lot of evangelical fire, so to speak. ORU requires its students to sign a code of conduct. And Jason, would you like to see what that code of conduct includes?
Yeah, sure.
Let's look at this code of conduct. Well, this is the New York Times talking about what students are expected to maintain. Students are expected to maintain the highest standards of integrity, honesty, modesty, morality. Certain behaviors are expressly prohibited.
What? Morality?
What? Oh. I know. This is crazy. Let's get these guys. These are the guys that we want to get. Morality. Certain behaviors are expressly prohibited in Scripture and therefore should be avoided by members of the university community. They include theft, lying, dishonesty, gossip, slander, backbiting, profanity, vulgarity, including crude language, sexual promiscuity, including adultery, and any homosexual behavior, premarital sex, drunkenness, immodesty of dress, and occult practices.
Well, you just pretty much threw the whole culture under the bus right there. So they're all gone. You lost them.
Yeah.
That whole promiscuity thing, man. You done, man. The audacity.
Well, those poor people. I actually had it. I don't know. It must have dropped off in my notes. I actually have that honor code that they're to pledge.
I'm curious because I looked at some of the team. What is, in your estimation, like the when I think of Oral Roberts, I think of the typical white evangelical, fundamental charismatic prosperity type person. I'm just curious, what's the black community's attraction to Oral Roberts?
Sports, baby.
Win.
Scholarship, opportunity.
The school blew up in like 4 years. Like it started in 74 or something. And then all of a sudden it's made other appearances in the tournament. And it's, I mean, not as much, but what I've read, they've actually had some really good programs come through there.
Yeah, they actually have. And I believe they're in Tulsa.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken there. And I know some people who have gone to ORU, and that's a pretty strong community. It's interesting because Tulsa is one of those places that is maybe a breeding ground of sorts for a lot of different evangelical movements, ORU included. But in terms of I know there's some black gospel ministers that are trained in that Tulsa area, in that Tulsa region. It's got a pretty checkered history in terms of racial tension, violence, and certainly the massacres that have taken place there in Tulsa. And so it's got an interesting history. But that particular city is one that has a lot of evangelical directions, from Southern Baptist to Pentecostal, Spirit-filled groups that do their training in Tulsa.
Okay.
And so it's not just sports. I said sports, but there's a lot of crossroads there.
Okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
We would yeah. We would probably spend an entire show looking at some of the history of Tulsa and how that has come to be the case. But I can just say this with more confidence, that generally speaking, the Spirit-filled movement has been a lot more willing to embrace minorities and to include minorities, and even to propagate some of the theology through some of these minority ministries that have come up. And so you see that sort of play its way out also in places like ORU. Now I say that's a whole different show, because one of the things that I often hear people say is, well, black people are just not solid in their theology. You know, like black congregations, they get into this health, wealth, and prosperity thing, you know, and that is true to a large extent. But we also have to look at some of the history of some of these white institutions that would not allow black people to engage and participate, and would deny them the opportunities. And that's a whole nother show for another day that we weren't planning on doing.
Yeah.
But kind of getting that out there, just to say, if you want to do a show on that, we certainly can do a show on that. I think Jamar Tisby has some good stuff on the color of compromise and how to fight racism that would probably be helpful.
Yeah.
Eric Mason is also thoughtful in this subject. And I guess for those evangelicals who are thinking, oh man, Erskine, you're not solid because you said Eric Mason. Erskine, you're not solid because you read a Jamar Tisby book. How dare you? I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it just because if you're saying that right now, you're pretty much an idiot. I don't agree with everything that they think or believe. I just said that for dexterity. Keep that energy, people. Because if I were to line Erskine up, if I were to take Jason off of the screen right now and put another version of Erskine up maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would say I don't agree with everything that guy on the other side of the screen thinks. Because that's what you do. You grow, you learn, and you read people who you don't always agree with so that you can get a wider perspective. That's what educated people do. Right, Jason? Mr. Dr. Plummer?
Yes. I actually got to hear Eric Mason preach at Southern's Chapel, and he was good. I mean, he was yeah, I would agree. There's not everything I line up with him on, but he was preaching the gospel.
Yeah, the founders don't like him.
He was and that's another show too, because there's some things I could sit there and say, Eric, you're dead on, man. Like, wow, that's great. And then there are things that I feel like that he gets, especially when he starts dealing with some of the racial tension and racial reconciliation. I'm like,
I got you.
That's not the way forward.
I got my concerns. Eric Mason, if you're watching this right now, or any people from Eric Mason's camp, could you please come on the show? Yeah. We're just quagmired in our own idiocy here. Yeah. We don't want to talk about you. We want to talk to you.
Yeah.
That's my attitude.
Good. Yeah, he's good. He's good for the church. Eric Mason is good for the church. He spices it up and makes you think. I haven't heard a lot of criticism against him, but that's not a circle I'm flowing in. So,
oh, my friend, that man gets death threats for some of the stuff that he says. It is ridiculous. The kind of stuff that, and from time to time, like, he hasn't done this a lot, and I would not respect him as much if he did it all the time. But from time to time, he'll show some of the tweets and some of the emails that he's received from white evangelicals. And you would think, brother, we're back in the 1960s, some of the stuff that people are saying to him.
Yeah.
And Jamar Tisby and anybody who's black, who has a voice, who speaks out and says, you know what? Not everything that white evangelicals has done in the past is neato keto. And not everything that white evangelicals are doing even today is helpful. You say something like that, you about to get some hate mail. The only reason I don't get hate mail is because, well, people don't know me.
Yeah.
You don't know me like that, Jason.
I got you.
Notes up here. Sorry. Carry the show, Jason. You got it.
Well, I won't ever send you hate mail, Erskine. We might have a round or two of texts that do a lot of fun, but I won't ever send you hate mail.
Well, I might have time to read it. We're both very busy.
Yeah. So are we going to get to the immigration thing, or
let's do immigration.
That's a hot topic right now.
Yeah, especially in Illinois, where all these people flooding in the borders. Yeah. What do you guys know about immigration?
Hey, look. It's funny that we talk about immigration the way we do because Texas is, getting it from all kinds of places, Mexico and they're getting it from Illinois. The two states that people are bailing Illinois, I mean, they're running away in masses right now. And they're heading to Tennessee and Texas.
Come on. We'll take them. Bring your tired, poor, and weary.
They're getting these poor Illinoisans who are just tired of being taxed and tired of putting up with the communist regime that we have, and are picking up their things, and they're heading to Tennessee. Then they're heading to Texas. In Texas,
me, mama, like a wind and a wave.
Well,
come on down to Tennessee, little wagon wheel.
Yeah. So immigration is a funny thing because we look at immigration from a foreign perspective. Those are on the outside coming in. But if you look at Texas, they're even flying into Chicago and they're making their way down to Dallas. So it's a trip. It's a trip. I think we lost. Was it last year? We lost almost 400,000 people left Illinois.
400,000.
Almost 400,000.
If you lost 400,000, there's going to be another book called the Great Migration.
Yeah.
South. the Greater Migration.
The Chicago Tribune did a piece, and I thought in 2017 it was like 317,000, and 2018 it's just trickling up, and it's getting closer to that. They're not seeing a decrease, or they're not seeing a stopping of people leaving Illinois, and they're heading to Texas and they're heading to Tennessee. That's the two places. So Texas is getting everybody, whether they like it or not.
New York, Joe Silva says New York, New Jersey, and California lead the way on people leaving.
Yeah, I mean, that would make the problem with California is they always come back. There's two sides to California. There's the Californians who leave and then bring their crazy politics to like Texas. That's where they're heading to Texas. They're following Elon Musk and all those guys.
Yeah.
And then they find their way back to California. So I don't know if they really left. I don't know if they leave.
It's a weather thing, my friend.
Yeah.
People love that weather out there, and people love that atmosphere out there. I mean, I did kind of like it when I was out in California for a stretch of the times that I've been out there. It's a different place. It's kind of awesome like that.
Yeah, Californians will take a beating on their taxes and their politics and all stuff because they love the weather and they love the coast. And it's a beautiful state. But eventually, you can only take their money, so much of their money before they have to up and leave. We had a gentleman come from California to Illinois, and he lasted about a year, and he's leaving, going back to California. I'm like, you swapped one communist state for another communist state. Like, what are you doing in Illinois?
Yeah.
Should have went to Texas. Everyone else
try the South, bro. Try the South. Beaver nuggets and everything.
Yeah.
All right, let me get into some of the immigration stuff here with more earnestness because I know time is short. You're a soccer dad now. The Biden administration, this is according to the New York Times, has faced growing criticism over its handling of the migration at the border, with Republicans saying that Mr. Biden's campaign, okay, just Erskine, just read the thing. I don't like some of the reporting that's going on. Once you're a president, regardless of your politics, you should be referred to as president. But anyway, maybe they missed that. Maybe they've changed that in writing now. Republicans saying Mr. Biden, or did the Republicans say Mr. Biden? If so, that's a slight against him. But I'll just read the article. Mr. Biden's campaign promised to be more compassionate to migrants has led to an increase in crossings. Mr. Biden is still using a pandemic emergency to rapidly turn away most single adults and families that cross, while providing them a chance to ask for a single or asylum. Although an increasing number of those families have been released into communities in the United States, some Mexican officials on the southern Texas border have refused to accept families that the Biden administration has tried to turn away, citing a lack of shelter capacity in Mexico and recent changes in Mexican law that prohibits the detention of small immigrant children. Biden said on Thursday an administration was negotiating with the president of Mexico to take back more of these immigrant families, and he said that he was confident they were going to see these changes. In the wake of all of this, the American Civil Liberties Union has filed a lawsuit challenging the pandemic emergency rule, and the legal action was put on hold to negotiate with the administration. Lee Gellerant, a lead attorney in the case, said on Twitter that Biden's comments in the news conference on expelling migrants, adults, and families may leave litigation as the only choice. The administration has welcomed children and teenagers into the United States and has struggled to quickly process them. Here's why I'm reading this. That number has ballooned to 5,150, according to data on Thursday by the report of Homeland Security. The largest number of minorities held in this way under the Trump administration was 2,600 in June of 2019. So there's a crisis at the border, as you had mentioned. Biden administration is scrambling to build more shelters at military sites and convention centers around the United States. My question to you this morning is Biden's tenderness, sleepiness, if you're trying to be rude to him, making it more advantageous for immigrants to try to come into our country now? Is old Softy Joe, Grandpa Joe, as some people have been calling him, Nicky New Guy, Nicky Nice Guy, letting all these people come into the border? What's going on there at the border as you understand it, Jason?
Yeah, I don't think it's I don't even think it's Biden per se. This has been a political football for a while. This is something that both parties have used to leverage different things against the American people or with the American people. I don't know. Just kind of watching President Biden do his thing. He's even his press conference. He just does not appear very, very strong right now. And so I think a lot of his policies and a lot of his decision making, like for instance, like he handed off the border crisis to Kamala Harris. I thought that was really interesting because leaders of the free world don't do that. They don't hand off major issues over to other people. And so I'm wondering if a lot of what's happening with these decisions is coming from pressure from the other side of his platform, his party, or the people inside of his party who are pushing things. And if you remember when Trump was in office, the left made this a really big issue. And they talked about CNN right now put an article out trying to compare this crisis versus Trump's crisis. And of course, on CNN, it was Trump's crisis was far worse than this one. And this one's really not that big of a deal compared to other ones. So sure. I see this as a political football. I don't see this as Joe having compassion on the immigrants or the Republican Party really caring, because now you got Ted Cruz down there now doing night video and coming across smugglers, and they're all making the case how this one party, this side of leadership is not handling it well, and this side is. It's not about the immigrants or the nation at this point. It's about putting out a story of how one side is not an effective leader versus the other, and so coming from that perspective, I don't think it's being handled well at all.
Yeah.
I think there's a lack of compassion, and there's also a lack of just wisdom, both. And
Yeah,
they're not.
I want to get into that because we can talk about wisdom from a biblical standpoint of obviously needing the Holy Spirit, needing God to direct our path, and then prayers and all those things related to that. But and I think I'll get to that a little bit later anyway. But I wanted to talk about that whole understanding of, even in a worldly sense, making decisions that are advantageous. There were things in the Trump administration that maybe both of us have brought up in the past that were things that we thought that may not have been the most wise thing. Do you feel like there's a lack of wisdom with some of the leadership things that are going on? Do you see any encouragement toward things that you feel like are wise, have been wise? Because I would say in both parties, there's been some problems. There's been some issues that I would want to bring out. And depending on who you are, we could sit back from our privilege and say, well, it's not a major crisis, or it is a major crisis. Well, we can kind of almost have that discussion. But to the people at the border, that's a major crisis. They don't get to decide. They don't get to sit back in Tennessee or Illinois and say, not that big a deal.
Yeah.
So is there any encouragement that you see in
wisdom?
Wisdom. Is there a way forward?
Okay. That is really interesting. You say that. I have this conversation with my kids all the time. There are two kinds of people in this world. There are wise people and there are foolish people, right?
Okay, biblical categories.
Yeah, there are two kinds of people. There are wise people and foolish people. And one of the things I've noticed over my lifetime is a decrease in just wisdom. So there's biblical wisdom. Of course, fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and we talk about that. But there's also a wisdom that God has put in the world, that things function and work a certain way. And when you work with that wisdom, things happen. For instance, if you plant an apple seed, an apple tree seed, and you put it in the ground, and you nurture it and you water it and you let it do its thing, wisdom says how God has wired things. That should grow into an apple tree, and you should have apples and be just fine. And that kind of wisdom is ingrained throughout the whole universe. Laws of gravity, right? What goes up must come down. That's part of God's wisdom for the earth. Even inside of social structures, when communities are able to uphold certain values, certain norms, there is a sense of life that happens in that community. And so you don't have to be a theologian or to understand that there's a sense of wisdom in the way we do things that keeps society in place. And I don't see us exercising or working inside of that kind of wisdom. Love of man, love of neighbor, upholding a certain value system, upholding morals, upholding the sanctity of marriage, upholding basic social constructs that keep this thing going. Aside from the blessing of God, right, of living righteously, we're not even operating inside the wisdom that he gives us inside of this world. And I don't see our leaders, many of our leaders doing that. Everyone's kind of doing what's right in your own eyes, or there's this fear of man. Everything's about the fear of man. Like, what are the people going to think? Or will this get me elected? Whatever. So instead of looking at the situation at the border and looking at these people, these human beings, and then also trying to look at what's best for our nation, they're not looking at it that way. They're looking at it about, how am I going to make myself look a certain way? How am I going to make my party look a certain way? How am I going to, keep this certain narrative message going? And so now you throw out humanity, you throw out compassion, you throw out what's best. And now you've got this really self-centered, almost narcissistic kind of vibe going, and it's killing people. It's just hurting people. That's what I see.
Yeah. And if you've watched this show for any length of time, and Dion's got a wonderful comment on the screen there, but if you watch the show for any length of time, you know that we always will hearken back to a people principle. There's policies that we can talk about, and we can go back and forth on, how to grade those policies and kind of where to find some solutions to those policies. But then there's people that are actually involved. And one of the things that the media does not do is actually highlight people and what's going on with people and how to help people. And instead, it jumps and jettisons to policies there. And I think and I've said this before, and this is kind of, I think some of what we talked about around the election is that it's extremely difficult in America with the two-party system to endorse one side or the other. Now, you're required at certain points to endorse one side or another, or so we thought. We both voted for a third-party candidate, and we're making a statement by doing so, by saying, let's open this thing up to more people, more ideas, more avenues of wisdom. And even if it creates a groundswell of support, we need to be thinking more than just it's either this or it's either that, because that has not helped us. And to the comment that Dion has made here on the screen, a good friend of the show and friend of ours, the two sides get together in the humanitarian aspect of what's going on. Who's thinking about that? Who's thinking about picking up the phone and saying, you know what, I've heard Tim Scott say some things that are really intriguing to me and they really great ideas. Maybe I don't agree with him on everything, but I think he can help me on this. I'm a Democrat. He's a Republican, but I think he can help me on this so that we can help these people, help our country. And so I'm going to give him a call. We don't seem to have the ability to do that. And I don't know if that's either shame or it's just a lack of wisdom like we're talking about here. It would be shameful to call somebody and tell them, I don't know the answers to this. I need help. Even if there's somebody that I don't politically agree with on everything, maybe they can help me out on this. And neither side, listen to me, for the folks that are watching and trying to figure out, is he conservative or is he liberal or what's going on with these two guys? Neither side has been willing to engage in this type of wise, beneficial, locking together and being able to solve problems. Douglas Murray, in his book, The Madness of Crowds, talks about this throughout the book, is that until we get the ability to find avenues where we can work together for a common good, we're always going to coalesce together in these crowds that then become echo chambers of what it is that that group wants to hear. And they become very oppressive toward other people who are not like them. That's the only option that you have if you're not going to work together.
Yeah. And what's really sad is that you could have two people inside of those parties, right? But the fear of retribution, the fear of going against the grain of what your party is saying to do, trumps or overwhelms you to the point where you do nothing. And I feel like we're in our political sphere that maybe I'm cynical. I'm becoming. I know that part of my problem is I've become a lot more cynical of our leadership as I've gotten a little older, and I feel
doing such a great job.
I feel bad about it because, man, when I was younger, I was very much, hey, look, you engage, and I still believe that, but you commit, you stay loyal, you hold your convictions and your values, you trust your leadership, you trust what's going on. They're not perfect, of course, but we got the best system to work through. And not anymore. Now I'm like, all of them to me are working for this narrative and this agenda. They're unwise. Many of them are wicked, straight up making, and both sides. I'm not even having the progressive lefts. I'm saying both sides have just got these wicked intentions that are not helpful to me, my family, or my community. And I have a very hard time trusting any of them because I'm watching situations like this unfold, and I'm watching how they're handling these people down on the border, and I'm watching there is no wisdom, there is no wise solutions, there's no coming together, there's no ability for you to look past certain things, say, look, we've actually got good solutions that we can help these people, but we're not willing to talk to each other because we're so pissed at each other because you're on the one side and I'm on the other, and so that to me creates a very cynical spirit. I think that's contagious. I think a lot of people are becoming very cynical towards our leadership.
Well, we certainly didn't have voter apathy as a result of that. It's now this type of cynicism that says, okay, well, our side is the only side that's going to be able to fix this. And so we just coalesce to that side and we just go hardcore in whatever direction it is. I want to give a couple of things that were kind of my takeaways for this, and we can jump to our other story here really quickly. But the first thing is, I'm watching President Biden struggle in some regards. And I don't say that with any type of glee, or I'm not saying that, you know, I'm more conservative, and so I definitely didn't vote for President Biden. He is the president now. I definitely wanted President Biden to not be the president, although the other guy I didn't vote for either. But here's the case. I'm watching him struggle, but as a Christian, my responsibility, and I would ask this of other Christians, are we continuing to pray for the president, that he would have wisdom? Are we praying that he would walk with God? I don't know, from an evangelical standpoint, I know he's Catholic. And so are we praying for his salvation if he doesn't have salvation? Are we praying that he would be able to work for the commonwealth and the common good of our culture and our society? And I would have to say that I'm a little behind on my prayers. And so I want to ratchet up my praying, certainly as I see him struggling in some of the areas that he's struggling, not just with immigration, but when we get into some of this mass shooter stuff here, he said some things that kind of let me know he's not all gung-ho about things. And then the second thing that was kind of my takeaway is to watch our lives and our sin that's can easily creep into our own lives. And so just keeping an appropriate evaluation of our own life before we begin to criticize somebody else.
Well, yeah, that's that Matthew 7 principle. You know, take the log out of your own eye before you jump to the speck of your brother's. We talked a little bit about that last week. The Gospel Coalition put out an article on immigration, and they said that the Pew Forum and Faith and Public Life put out there that 12% of evangelicals they polled view immigration through the lens of faith, right? And I would say that this border crisis is an immigration obviously issue, and that would actually be very concerning to me as a pastor, that we don't see that only 12% of my congregation would view this issue through the lens of Scripture. Many of them, my assumption is, that would view it more politically, and so I would say as a pastor, it would be my responsibility to encourage my people to understand, what does it mean to love your neighbor? How does God instruct us to love the foreigner? Especially if you look in the Old Testament, you start to see the welcoming nature, you know, and the things of that kind. And I'm all for policy reform. I'm all for protecting the borders of our sovereign nation. But I also know that the Christian faith, the Scriptures, inform me that I am to do everything I can to love the foreigner, to love the neighbor, to exercise compassion. And I would think another way forward for the church in this issue is we need to have a biblical worldview and perspective when we look at these folks, image bearers, and opportunity for the nations to hear the gospel and see the gospel lived out in our faithfulness to the Scriptures and in our commitment to them. So that was kind of a concerning read for me.
Yeah. Really quickly, Tom Golly, thank you for your comment there on the show. Thank you for tuning in, watching, being a part of what's going on here with the Way Forward. Get this different orientation going on here. Wanted to jump quickly to some mass shooter stuff here, and I know we've got only a short amount of time to do that, but there's been 18 killed in the last week or so in Atlanta and then also in Colorado. I wanted to give some quick comments about that and just thoughts related to this whole issue of mass shooting. And Jason, I'll kind of take the lead a little bit on that and just say that we have a crisis, so to speak. Well, where are my notes at? In the sense that sin is still rampant. I think you and I were talking a little bit earlier this week, and we were saying, well, you can put people in quarantine, you can put them in their houses, but at some point when they come out and they have the opportunity, that sin that's within their heart is going to manifest itself in some way. Unfortunately, we've seen that, and our compassion goes to the families and all those communities that have been affected by these shootings. But that goes in the direction of people exercising their sinful nature and perpetrating that in these communities against other people. And we see that no amount of legislation or legislative safeguards here are stopping eradicating this kind of behavior that's taking place in the most civilized society in the world. And so what's your kind of, I guess, introductory or general comment as you see these mass shootings that's going on, and the way that the media has handled them?
I have a feeling you're going to see more of the same. I think we had an issue here the same week. We had an issue here in my own hometown.
Yeah, tell us about that. That was pretty scary.
Yeah,
I had to check in on you a couple of times this last week.
Yeah. So we had a guy really just get tired of all the noise, and he some gentleman was riding his motorcycle down the street, and he just flipped out, pulled out his AR-15, and started shooting this guy, and he shot him 6 times, put out 8 rounds. I mean, there are kids in the neighborhood.
National news.
Yeah, it was crazy. Thank God that the gentleman who got shot lived.
You got to die to make national news.
Yeah. So thankfully he lived, and he's doing well. But when you start looking at why this guy did it, it simply was he was just tired of the noise, and you can take that figuratively. I think he's been revved up probably by what he's seeing on the news, their paranoia, the angst, the polarization. If you start to look in this guy's life a little bit, there's some things there. And then, he just not having a biblical worldview, not having an understanding that we just don't go kill people. So even that, again, there's that wisdom, right? In a wise society, it's not wise to just go out and kill people randomly. It doesn't work. So he doesn't even have that. And so, my thing is with my community is we have to try to help people understand that you've got to turn off the frustration. One of the things I try to tell my church often is you can spend time with Fox News and CNN and be completely frustrated because those people are frustrating and they're frustrated.
Yeah.
Listen to Tucker Carlson, listen to Lemon, listen to those guys, and there's nothing but frustration. Or you can spend time with Christ,
frustration,
who's never frustrated. You know what I'm saying? Like Jesus is never frustrated. Nothing's going to thwart his plan. And I'm finding that part of the church spends way too much time over here, and our communities are spending so much time frustrated, right? And they're never finding rest. And all of a sudden, they get the opportunity to exercise that I'm off it. And he goes, not too long ago, there was a guy in Pennsylvania who was having an argument with his neighbor over shoveling snow. And he just flipped. He went in his house, grabbed his 9, and took out his neighbor. Why'd you do it? I'm done.
Couldn't take it anymore. You're shoveling that snow up on my part of the property. Yeah, keep that snow to yourself, homeboy.
That's a sinful heart exercising sin. That's also the frustration of the media. That's also the frustration of our culture and society. People are so wound. I talked to a friend of mine who travels a lot internationally, and he says one of the things he said was, he said, "Look, I'm on the airplane, and those people are wound. Like everybody is wound up, tight, and so of course, what's going to happen, man? People reach their capacity, and they do crazy things, and they start to things like shoot people, and I don't want to.
Hey, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to make light of it. I'm trying to make this kind of a reductio ad absurdum. Like it's absurd that somebody would get out a gun, and because somebody's not, and there could have been other circumstances related to that. Certainly there's more words that were said, and there's probably a long history of, grievances that they had one toward another. Yeah. But culminating in that and responding the way that they did.
I was talking to my son about it, and I said, I don't care how mad you get. It's absurd to pull your gun out and just kill people over snow in your yard. Like that's absurdity. Like we don't go there. The Bible does not allow you to go there. Christ doesn't allow you to go there. You trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your understanding, and all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. And what do our people have to do with their anger when it's all frustrated enough? Well, the gospel says you take it to the cross and you put your hope in the resurrection. You put your hope in the future to come, but you don't come at your neighbor like that. And our society lost that biblical worldview. They've lost that morality and value system. It's being perpetuated by the media that you are to own yours, take yours, do yours, and hey, take matters in your own hands. And then at the same time, they'll tell you, how bad you are. They'll even use wicked language, like religious language, to describe it, and yet deny that even part of that part of the whole element. He was mentally ill, or he was something like that. And yeah, I get it. He had some problems, but don't deny the sinful side of it. And so the society is we're just a really weird bunch that way. And the solutions we come up with is, okay, let's take all of our guns away. Okay.
Or the ammunition.
Or the ammunition, right? Let's take the ammunition away. And or
the kind of gun.
Yeah, yeah. But you still have the sinful man pulling the trigger. If it's not a gun, it'll be a fork. It'll be whatever he can get his hands on to exercise that anger. And
well, let me be clear, so that people know where I'm coming from. Like, those are all, I believe, valid discussion points. And I'm saying this because I know there's people from Texas that are watching. Those are all valid discussion points. But if we don't go to the root of the issue, then, like you said, let's now fight each other with knives. Let's fight each other with swords. Like, whatever we take away, there's going to still be this impetus within man.
That's exactly right.
That leads toward death. And brother, you on fire today, man. Woo! You got to go, man.
I do. No, well, I was sad for my community that this guy shot him, and I don't think taking your guns away is the answer. I think what my regret is did we engage this guy in the gospel at all?
Come on, now we're bringing it home. Let's land the plane right there. Because you were talking about a situation. He literally texted me and said, "Hey, we have an active shooter in town," and I'm like, "What? What's going on here?" So I've been checking on you all week, but hey. This man is asking the question that we as Christians need to ask, and that's why we're on the way forward. Did we engage this man, or in Atlanta, this young man, or out in Colorado, this man who had maybe some Muslim background beliefs? Did we engage him at some point with some propensity toward hope or encouragement or gospel or life? Or inclusion in things that matter? And did we approach them with the joy of the Lord? Maybe we did, but those are fair questions for us to begin asking. Are we doing that? Because who knows? I think I know my neighbors pretty well, but every time they're interviewed, the neighbors are just like, they were such a nice person. They kept their yard. We said hello. We never knew this was going on.
If you look at this dude who pulled out his AR-15, he's a 46-year-old guy who loves nature. He's got pictures of him. He looks like he's in his 30s. He looks like a professional. His neighbors said he was kind of quiet, kind of kept to himself, but not a problem. There was a problem. There was a problem. There was a problem. Yeah. My question to me is, Plumber, did you ever engage this guy in the gospel? What about the guy on the bike? He almost lost his life. I mean, he was minutes away from eternity. Did you engage him in the gospel? Have you ever made contact with these people? Did you help this man with his paranoia? Did you ever try to give him hope? Try to give him another way of looking at life, except through the lens or the scope of his AR-15. And that's what keeps coming back to me is I have neighbors out there who desperately need the gospel. And some of their answers are lined up, well, I'll just get my gun and I'll handle business. And I say, well, no, there's actually a better way, a more life-giving way, and that's through Jesus Christ. So,
amen. I love it, brother. You got to go, man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna close down the show today,
All right.
if that's
Take
okay.
it. Yeah, take it, man. Take it.
All right, you balled out. I'll let you talk most of the time today. Now I'm gonna go for another hour, and I'm gonna talk.
Yeah.
all the show ratings will be dropping after you leave from here. So,
I doubt it. I doubt it.
but thank you so much, Jason, for your time, and yeah, thank you for all of your investment in time, prayer, support. You and I are going to be going on the road, I think, here in a couple of weeks.
Hopefully, I'm trying to work it out.
Hopefully.
Hopefully,
I'm going on the road regardless.
yeah,
That's how it is. But yeah, hopefully we can both get on the road together, and we're gonna have a series of interviews that are lined up. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a moment. But I wanted to brag on something about you, so you have to go away.
Okay. All right.
All right. Take care, my friend. Love you.
All right. Bye. You too.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was Jason Plummer, who is joining us, the co-host of the Way Forward broadcast. And I wanted to brag really quickly on my good friend and brother in Christ. He is going to have to not be as heavily invested in, at least time-wise, on here. We've got to have some opportunities for him to jump off early like we do today, because he is working in a program where they are mentoring at-risk youth in their community. Their church has stepped up in this initiative, and I just want to give praise and glory and honor and thanks to the Lord for allowing the folks at First Baptist Litchfield to really step into their community and take that aspect of what they're doing very seriously. An encouragement to our family as well, because we had the opportunity to join them for their Christmas program, played some songs for them, had some fun, worked alongside them with the mentoring program. My kids and family both enjoyed the opportunity to serve there and look to do that at some point again in the future. Now, Jason has adopted another problem, or not say problem, but he's adopted another situation that could have been a problem, but he's got an amazing wife who said, okay, we're going to do this. One of the kids from the program, who's at times struggling, needed some direction and some encouragement in life. And so he took up the impetus to go and talk to this boy's mother, who works 60 hours a week. There's no possible way that she could do anything other than what she's doing, and said, what if we signed him up for soccer? What if we got him involved in a team? What if we paid for all the soccer, all the transportation, everything that he needs, all the materials and supplies, so that he could play soccer and then take him to the games? And so the mother agreed to that. And so his family, is a family of 5 kids already, has adopted this 6th kid who is not their kid, so that they can take him to his soccer games and have him involved in a very worthwhile sports endeavor in that community. And so he is scurrying off now to a soccer game and taking one of these students with him, and family in support of this student. And he's talked about what tremendous changes this has made in this student to be included in something and have the support of a family behind him. And even though his mother doesn't get a chance to go to the games because she works on Saturdays, a big work day, trying to make ends meet for their family, they're keeping her involved in the process. And I just want to say, for those of you who are watching Way Forward, and we jump on here and we got some, spurious political opinions at times, and theological ramblings that are going on at times, when it boils down to it, there is something to be said about actually putting in the work. And you'll hear us talk about that from time to time, not so that we can brag on ourselves. And in fact, Jason would never say anything about it. That's why I wanted him to be off the show, because all you would know is just he had to go pretty quickly today. But on some of these shows, we move it up an hour, or we move it around. And that doesn't help you with your ratings, because you need to have a consistent time that you come on. But we want to come on each Saturday. But we had to transform that, or at least change that, this Saturday, because he's got games on Saturdays now, and he's got commitments that he's made, and his family and his wife understand that, and they have embraced that. And I think that's just a classic example of looking for the small things that we can do that become big things in people's lives. Jason and I talked about, are we reaching our neighbors? I'll tell a story here, and then I'll talk a little bit about our upcoming tour and some of the guests that we have coming onto the show. I was riding my bike through the neighborhood yesterday, and just enjoying the beautiful weather that we had yesterday. It's raining here today, but we had beautiful weather yesterday. And I came up on some people that I thought that's one of my neighbors, and then maybe that's somebody else that I don't know. And, I'm going downhill. And so I'm thinking it'd be really easy to just kind of get some momentum and, throw the casual wave and say, hey, neighbor, pass by. I don't think there would be anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong when that happens. Maybe I was trying to ride my bike, trying to get back home. Shoot, what's going on there? But something was tapping me on the shoulder and saying, you probably need to slow down and just say hello and just say thank you for something that your neighbor did. And so, I slowed it down a little bit and just kind of, not to scare them or anything, not like a creeper. I was on the other side of the road, but just said, hey, how's it going? To the neighbor that I hadn't met. I was like, I hadn't met you. My name is Erskine. Then I started talking a little bit. Hey, I want to thank my other neighbor for this. Possibilities in the future of helping out in other ways, and just checking in with people and being a good neighbor. No, I didn't share a full orb gospel presentation. So, if you're upset that I didn't stop them and just, run my bike into their dogs and just like, hey, you're going to have to listen to this because you could go to hell and you could die. The Lord is in control of all of that. But I did want to at least begin the preparatory steps of being able to say, hey, I'm concerned and I'm very grateful that you're one of my neighbors. And maybe if we started there today with a couple of more examples of just letting our neighbors know that we're grateful that God has given us the ability to be alive in the place where we're at, grateful that we have neighbors. And yeah, so just starting with some of those foundational things I think is important. And Jason and his family certainly are demonstrating that in the way that they're going about their lives. Now, quickly, before I close out the show, I want to mention the fact that we are going on a road tour show. I don't even know how that is going to work its way out, but we have a number of interviews that are coming up after Easter, second or third week of April, where we're going to be traveling. I will be traveling up to Illinois, also up to Wisconsin, and we're going to be interviewing some people along the way on some of the topics that we talk about on this show related to race, politics, religion, all the things you're not supposed to talk about. We're going to be talking about them all the time. And so we're going to get responses, and we're going to probably fly in some video clips from some of the people that we get a chance to interview, just to give you guys a little bit of a feel for maybe this is not so much man on the street interviews, but some key leaders that are out there who are dealing with these issues in various contexts and having to figure out the way forward in their communities and in their places of occupancy. And so that's coming up. Hopefully Jason will get a chance to join me on that. Again, one of the things that he told me is one of the things that might throw a wrench in that tour is that now he's a soccer dad and he's got responsibilities on Saturdays. And so we were planning on traveling on one of these Saturdays and really getting some good interviews. And so we'll keep that momentum going. If nothing else, I'll be out there doing some man on the street stuff in some of these interviews. And so you have that to look forward to. Special guest coming up here in a few weeks. It's going to be one of my relatives. I will say she has been very vocal on the show, but she actually knows her stuff. So it's one of those things where she didn't just get on the show because she's a relative, although she got an interview because she was a relative, but she interviewed with Jason and I and said, hey, here's the content that I have. Here's how this could grow the show. Here's how this would be a contribution to the show. And so I think we're going to bring her on for an episode. My Aunt Marcia, she's going to be coming on and talking to us about workplace discrimination and just a ton of good information that she has in that area. So we're looking forward to having her on the show and really chopping it up with her, because with my family members, there's no holds barred. If you know anything about my family, get your words in quickly because you may not get another chance to speak. And if you don't speak loudly, you're not going to be heard. But we'll keep it civil on the show. Jason is a good moderator of those kind of things, and it's going to be a kind and decent and right show. But we will be talking about some workplace discrimination in a series that we want to call How to Be a Workplace Witness. We're talking about being a neighborhood witness and an influencer in your neighborhood. But for jobs that we go to, especially jobs that we work with other people if we're not working from home, how do we become an influencer in that area as well? So we'll be talking about that in the upcoming weeks. Now, in relationship to the way forward, thank you guys so much for the comments that were made today. You guys were so kind, and we love the fact that you guys participated in the way forward with us today. We are going to sign off here. But again, we'll be coming back next week and the week after and the week after, week after, if the Lord tarries. He may come back today, in which case there will be no way forward next week. We are canceling the show. But in the wake of the Lord giving us some more time to do this, we love the fact that you guys joined us here. And go out and be productive today. Go out and do some amazing, incredible things as God gives you strength and as God gives you opportunity. And as always, I can say this on a Saturday, worship the Lord Jesus with the Lord's people on the Lord's day. And so God bless you guys. Thank you for tuning into The Way Forward. Thank you for all the comments, the YouTube folks that are out there, international audience. Thank you guys for joining us, and Facebook Live, and so many people to thank. We should just roll some credits at the end of this, but I'll just play the show outro. Way Forward.